This conference will now be recorded.
So Travel Central's been in business since 1988. We have over 23 travel advisors here just to support travelers just like you. Our goal is to use our knowledge, our resources, and our expertise from the moment you call us to plan your vacation all the way to the day you return home. Our one advisor, this is the best part, I think, is dedicated to you. You can call, email, or text them. They're available to you to answer questions, help you with, be your advocate if there's a schedule change on your airline, or just make dinner reservations, or those little things that you need to be taken care of before and during your travel. We also belong to a large organization called Signature Travel Network. It's a consortium that offers their expertise, but more importantly, some enhancements to our travelers. Today, we also have many preferred partnerships, and what that does is make sure that we have vetted and checked these suppliers, that when you go on vacation, not only do they have your back, we have your back because we know that they're going to provide the services you and I both expect. So now I'm going to turn it over to Marilyn with Alexander Plus Roberts. Like I said, this is going to be recorded, so we'll send you the recording of it. And she is an expert. This is 60% of all vacations with Alexander Plus Roberts go to Africa. And today we're going to focus specifically on Southern Africa. So Marilyn, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm so happy to be able to be here with Travel Central and all of you that have joined us today to learn more about traveling in Southern Africa. It is a magnificent destination that you will be completely captivated by should you decide to visit it, which I'm sure you will at some point. So, Alexander and Roberts, we've been around 78 years, so we're not new to the business at all. And our distinctive style wraps around our small group journeys of 16 or less. So, that's how many will be traveling with you on this particular tour. We also offer private journeys. We have small ships around the world and custom arrangements that we work with Travel Central on to make it the best experience possible for you and your traveling party. So, what's most popular about us is those travel styles. First of all, small group journeys, never more than 16 guests. And here's a viewpoint of what it would look like to travel with so few people. It could always be less, and it will never be more than 16. And then we also offer the ultimate in flexibility, which is our private journeys. So if you have two couples that love to travel together, or you're trying to put together something for a small family opportunity or something along that line, then we make it private for your dates and your party for the entire experience. It would be private just to you all. You know what's most important, I think, about traveling to Africa is our award winning guides. They truly make the experience come alive with their extensive knowledge of animals and flora and the land. And they're also certified in any necessary first aid. You know, they're our teacher, they're our mentor, and they're also our protector when we are out in the bush. And they are amazing people. Their personalities will captivate you from the very first time they say hello. And they take such good care of you in these camps. You just can't imagine how much you feel like royalty when you spend time in one of these luxurious camps. So, with that in mind, we're talking today about this fabulous tour, which is our wild and wonderful Southern Africa, which includes Botswana, Zimbabwe, and Victoria Falls. So, you can see the map here, which explains what our route would be. And this one, I would have to say, is definitely for the safari purist. This value packed luxury safari explores two of Africa's most game rich regions, Botswana's Okavango Delta and Zimbabwe's Hwange National Park, as well as Victoria Falls. So you can see from the itinerary, or excuse me, the map there, we're going to start out in the Okavango Delta at the Quiroki camp. We'll spend 3 nights there, 2 nights in Victoria Falls, and then 3 nights in Zimbabwe in Hwange National Park at Davison's Camp. This is a spectacular arrangement. The wildlife and the experience here is like nothing else you can possibly imagine. I mean, there's lots of places to go on safari, but I'd have to say that once you experience something like this, with these wonderful flight transfers in between each point, or you're not wasting time traveling across the ground, it's really a magical experience. And basically, this is an all inclusive program, except for your stay at the Victoria Falls. So let's check it out, shall we? Here's a recent client review. My husband and I recently returned from wild and wonderful southern Africa, Botswana, Victoria Falls, and Zimbabwe. It was magnificent. We would definitely return to the Key camp in the Okavango Delta and at the Davison's camp in Hwange National Park. In both places, the camps, the service, the meals were superb. Our guides, Jacob and Edwin, were excellent. Wildlife sightings were amazing. We did not want to leave either camp. And that's what we hear a lot from people. I've loved this place so much, I don't ever want to go home. We did enjoy our extension to the Sabi San's private reserve at Kruger. However, our stay in Botswana and Zimbabwe were unparalleled. We felt one with nature. The peace, the calm, the animals, the beauty, and the people will stay with us forever. And that's a very common feeling of people that have taken this tour or anything that involves these areas for sure. It is just that special. Documentation and health, it's always important to know. One good thing to know is that you will not need a yellow fever shot, even though we are visiting Zambia and Zimbabwe. You would only need a yellow fever shot if you were combining this visit with any other place in East Africa. There is a recommendation for malaria pills, which you do not need to start until you're just getting ready to go into the bush. And I learned a very important lesson on my trip to Botswana was to take the malaria pills with dinner, because that way, if it does affect you in any tiny way, maybe slightly dizzy, slightly nauseous, maybe not at all, but for some people it does. So if you take it then you would be asleep if anything was going to bother you, and it wouldn't be any big deal. So that's my recommendation for taking those malaria pills. So the seasonality in Botswana, what we want to know about, it's dry from May to September, and the temps range from 68 and 77, cooler at night, and this is the best time to see game as animals congregate around permanent water sources and the foliage is sparse. Only the permanent rivers flow in this season, and the central areas of the park dries out. Water levels in the Okavango Delta are at their highest during the dry season, which again is May to September, creating the waterways and the channels Botswana is famous for. Wet or green season, what falls between December and March. These are their summer months, so it is hot, like the upper 80s to 90s, and quite humid. Spring, which is September to November in Botswana, sees temperatures gradually increasing with daily highs ranging from 77 to 95. So you can see there's a variation there. Obviously, the best is May to September, but I think it could also be possible to do between December and March if you're one who can tolerate the heat, that is. And then spring, which is September to November, that one is probably not the best timing just because it really does get quite hot. So let's talk about something else which I think is very important. Let's start with an important message. The people say that main reason they want to go to Africa is to see the animals. Well, that may be very true in the beginning of their journey, but when they see and feel all of the smiles and the kindness of the guides and the camp staff, people will usually go back and tell their friends and colleagues how wonderfully they were treated. And that is completely the truth. Everybody makes you feel like you are so welcome and they would do anything to make you happy. You never have to lift a finger in these camps. Your bags are well taken care of and you don't have to worry about anything. Now we use on this package flight transfers. Here is the type of light aircraft that we use, and here we are inside the cabin. It is a really special way to make your way from one place to the next. Because why? The views are incredible. You're not flying that high, and you can still see the land and the animals as they're making their way around the delta and the other areas that you will visit. It's just really special. And it's such a nice way for you to get from point to point because you don't have to travel by the ground for such a long distance. Even though you would see animals at that time, you're going to make your next point probably 45 minutes to an hour, if that. So that leaves you plenty of time at your next location to get right out on safari and make it be as happy as possible. So I wanted to show you this little map of the Botswana so you could get a sense of, kind of where we are here. I'm pointing to a couple of places. One is the Maun there, where there's a left-hand arrow coming in. That's where we would fly from to get to the Okavango Delta. That's your last point of travel in that particular area. And then the other thing I'm pointing to with the downward arrow on the left is where we would be staying in the Okavango Delta. And then the other little arrow from the top point is Kasane, and that would be the airport we would use to fly over to Victoria Falls and then continue on there after that to Zimbabwe for our last safari experience. So it's really a very magical place, and you can see what it borders also. Namibia, we've got, of course, Zambia and Zimbabwe, all things that you probably recognize as very popular safari places. So the Okavango Delta is described as the jewel of the Kalahari. It is tranquil and isolated oasis set in Botswana's harsh, arid desert, widely considered to be as one of Africa's best safari destinations with its special diversity of fauna and flora. It provides a true big five-star safari experience with vast herds of elephant, buffalo, and hippo making this fertile region their home, as well as numerous antelope, giraffe, and zebra, followed by lion, leopard, cheetah, and the stealthy crocodile. And that's probably in a pretty good order because those predators would be on the end. The delta environment has a large number of animal populations that are otherwise rare, such as the red lueche, the sitalunga, wild dogs, and the wattled crane. As the Okavango Delta is an exclusive destination, it remains relatively wild, unpopulated, and untouched. So, arguably one of the planet's last remaining Gardens of Eden, the Delta is an emerald green paradise in the middle of the Kalahari Desert, and it is a World Heritage Site. Permanent wetlands situated in the northwestern corner of Botswana, the delta's maze of channels and floodplains and woodlands are teeming with wildlife. Most of the eastern side of the delta is protected by the Moremi Game Reserves. And just a little FYI, I am in the back seat on the right-hand side of that particular Jeep. That was our introduction into Botswana and our first camp. So one thing I wanted to mention, it may not seem important, but honestly, I can tell you that it is. So this is about the reserves and the concessions. In Botswana, there are major reserves like the Okavango Delta, which we're looking at, the Chobe National Park, and the Moremi Reserve. And then within the reserves, there are private concessions. The concessions are awarded to safari operators by the government for a defined period of time and include strict regulations with regards to the management of the area. Traversing in the concessions is limited to the company owning the concession, unless agreements are reached for crossing over from one to another. That's what makes it so exclusive. So let's check out our first place that we will be staying. Here is how you are typically greeted at almost any camp, and this is at Kiroqui. It's such a fun feeling. Everybody's out there kind of singing and waving and laughing, and it just makes you feel so very special. And the name Kiroqui means the place where the buffalo broke through the bush and into the water. And then look at these little birds on top of that Cape Buffalo. You guys, we got a ride. And that's a very common scene, by the way. It's pretty amazing. So here is our camp in 2025 in Botswana on this particular program. Kiroqui is located between two rivers, and there's only 8 tented suites, which are connected to the spacious open dining, lounge, and bar areas on a raised deck, perfectly situated to view the wildlife as they feed and wallow in the nearby waters. Quiroqui's 64,247 acres of private wilderness borders the renowned Morimi Reserve, famous for the intense predator-prey encounters. And of course, when you're staying at these properties, like the two camps, this one and the one at the end, it includes all of your meals, house drinks, game drives, water makuro excursions, and it is 100% solar powered. Beautiful areas. Oh, here is your lovely bedroom. There is your ensuite, which is really lovely. Here's a different viewpoint of it. You can see that you're always feeling like you're in the nature. And then behind that wall with the vanities would be the other portion with the shower and the toilet area. And this is a spectacular place. I love the fact that they have this little lily pond right here in the main area. And this is kind of the hangout. This is where we would dine. You can see the table behind that couch there. On the right-hand side is just some sitting areas. There's the lounge in the middle dividing the two places. And there's all kinds of viewing no matter where you are in this fabulous property. The food is fresh and healthy and really appealing. And they do all this, with locally sourced produce, especially. And it's just a really wonderful experience. It's things you would not normally expect in this kind of a location, but it is really wonderful food, and everyone seems to enjoy it. Now let's talk a little bit about the included activities. You will glide silently through pristine waterways of the Okavango Delta in a mokoro or traditional style dugout canoe, giving you a unique perspective of the diversity of life, both big and small, in this fascinating ecosystem. With lifelong skill, your safari guide will use his nagashi, a long wooden pole, to steer and propel your mokoro canoe through the narrow channels of the Okavango Delta. Drifting in nearly complete silence puts you at one with the environment, making it all easier to spot the animals that come to the river to quench their thirst. The tsebe, the red lechwe, impala, and even zebra come to drink in this particular area. And with 380 species recorded, this pristine sector of the Delta is also a birder's paradise. So in 2026, we will use the Jacana Camp, which is situated in a magnificent island inside the Jau concession on the border of the Morimi Game Reserve. We are very fortunate to be at Jacana, which only has 5 tents, guaranteeing attentive service and a remote, intimate stay. While it all used to be only a water camp, recent changes to the ecology in the region have turned it into both a water and a land-based camp with game drives by jeep as well as by the Makoro. So as we can see here, It consists, as I mentioned earlier, of 5 small Muro-style tents, accommodating just a maximum of 8 guests. That's how many people will be here with you in this experience. Each tent, as we can see, is situated on a wooden deck, and they overlook the floodplains, which of course has an ensuite bathroom with a flush toilet and a shower. The bathroom is enclosed. Here is the main area, which is the upper top floor on an elevated wooden deck. And then down below is a pub and a lounge area with an open fire pit under the stars. There's also a lovely pool, which you can take advantage of. It's a lovely thing to do in between, say, the morning or maybe after lunch and before the afternoon game drive. It's like the optimal time to use it. And remember, there's only going to be 8 people here, so if that. Some of the other activities, of course, are the boat excursions. Can you imagine just sitting here in silence and watching the animals, come down to the water to drink? And it's so quiet when you're on safari, either in this kind of a situation or if you're in the vehicles. There's hardly a sound. Everybody barely whispers because you don't want to, disturb the peace of the animals and your own peace. And you will quickly become adapted to a sundowner, probably many people's favorite part of the day. You'll be traveling around in your Jeep, and they probably already have determined what would be the best spot for that day's sundowner. And so all of a sudden you'll just pull up and circle around, and they'll have the wonderful table set up with snacks, a bar thing, alcohol and wine and soft drinks, whatever you're interested in. And the whole purpose is to gather together, enjoy something light, and watch the sunset. Like I said, it'll become one of your favorites very quickly. And then here's a sample of the Jeeps. These are open air Land Rovers, which accommodate a maximum of 7 people, which allows each guest a window seat, which is important, not to try and look around someone. You have a completely wonderful view. Here we see, and speaking of views, here's a lion pride crossing over the water. The concession has permanent water, so the game viewing is exceptional all year long. We'll see the various types of the antelope family. They're really beautiful and just have such a stoic sort of a look to them. They're really exceptional. And we'll also see the cheetah, which is known as the fastest animal on land. So now we wrap up our stay in Botswana, and we are continuing on to Victoria Falls. So here we are inside the aircraft again, and I'd like to mention that on any program that we work with in South Africa with the Wilderness Company, they own and operate all of their aircraft. These are not subletted from someone else, so everyone is trained by Wilderness staff. They are all certified, of course. They're all excellent pilots and helpers when they have them. And it's just a really cool experience. As I said earlier, saving so much time as opposed to traveling from point to point by land. And what's also cool is you always can have a great view. So here we are. We've arrived at our next location in Victoria Falls, which is the Palm River Hotel. We upgraded to this, feeling that it was just a really special place that people could enjoy with this spectacular location, as you can see. It's got a lovely grand entrance, which leads you into, here's a nighttime shot of that. I forgot that comes before the interior. I love that picture. And then here we come from the entrance into the lobby area where there's plenty of seating, of course, the front desk. It's lovely decor, great room sizes, 380 square feet. All of A&R guests receive a balcony room, so you've got plenty of viewing possibilities. There's the river in the distance, and you could sit out here with glass of wine or iced tea or whatever floats your boat and really enjoy this location. And there's just another viewpoint of the room. And again, you great size ensuite. Here is the dining room. And you can also make arrangements to be able to dine by the river. How special would that be with just just a couple like these folks, or maybe two couples together, or a small family group, whatever you have chosen as your traveling companions. And speaking of food, it is spectacular. They also offer a complimentary afternoon tea between 3:30 and 4 in the lobby area, so you're always having something to eat. Um, Later in the afternoon, we'll head down to the banks of the Zambezi River for a cruise that begins with the sundowner cocktails that we learned about, some hors d'oeuvres, and a chance to see hippos and crocodiles wallowing in the water, as well as elephant and antelope grazing at the river's edge. Really would be a special time to be able to see I think these are kudzu. I'm not sure about that, but they're, or a lechwe, one of the other really beautiful animals. And then as night begins to fall at the Palm River, it's really special because the sun is setting, the stars are beginning to fill the darkening sky, and you'll be seated in the dining room where they'll have an elegant three-course plated dinner will be served. Now we're going to the falls. David Livingstone was the first European to visit the falls and named it after Queen Victoria, but locals still call it Mosai Oatunya, the smoke that thunders, as our expert guide takes you along the scenic paths through the rainforest alive with bird life. You'll hit the best vantage points, including a heart-pounding view over the famous Devil's Cataract. And you will also cross this bridge called the Knight's Bridge, which will take you right over the chasm. And perhaps by the tour's end, you might agree that the local name best captures the dramatic spray and the deafening roar of the mighty Zambezi River as it plunges more than 300 feet over a mile-wide chasm. And now we're going to be heading off to our next destination, which is Hwange National Park. Zimbabwe is a landlocked country situated between two great rivers. The mighty Zambezi cuts along the northern frontier, forming the border with Zambia, and the liquid Limpopo forms the southern border with South Africa. In between, the country has a variety of habitats, from the granite hills of the Matapos to the majestic mountains, lush forests, and beautiful rivers of the eastern highlands. As such, there is much to attract the traveler, between the wildlife viewing and the adrenaline adventures to the encountering the history of the Zimbabwean people going back thousands of years. So here we are again talking about seasonality. It's important. It does help you guide you as far as when you might be thinking to go. And here in Zimbabwe, the dry season is April to October, which is their winter. There's virtually no rainfall and the humidity is very low. The wildlife will concentrate around the water holes and the rivers when the other water sources dry up. In April and May, which is the end of summer, temperatures are relatively cool, typically around 50 degrees in the morning and about 82 in the afternoon. June, July, and August, be sure to pack some warm clothing because the early morning gate drives and open vehicles could be cold. The average morning temperature is 43 degrees, and the afternoons will be really pleasant with temperatures around 77. September and October, the heat gradually builds and peaks in October. The lower lying areas get really hot with temperatures of 90 degrees and above and very humid. Practically all of Hwange's rain falls over the warm summer months from November to March, and wildlife is a little more difficult to locate during this period as the animals tend to go deeper into the bush. The wet season, which is November to March, this month is unpredictable Could start raining in the afternoons, and 64 degrees in the morning, about 90 in the afternoon. These are the wettest months, characterized by short but often dramatic afternoon thunderstorms. Nights and mornings are warm, around 64, and afternoon temperatures are around 86, and the humidity is high, which, of course, as we know, makes it feel hotter. And now we're at our final location, which is here at Davison's Camp. It is situated in a very remote, wildlife-rich corner of Hwange National Park, which was named after the founder of the Hwange National Park and its very first warden, who was Ted Davison. Game drives and guided nature walks explore the private concessions. Accommodations beneath the false mopane trees of Davison's, the 9 bright and airy tents, including a family room, span on either side of the expansive main area, complete with a fire pit, raised viewing deck, and a separate pool area. And here is the inside of the ensuite. Beautiful area for dining, as you can see, and right there to the right is the fire pit. And here's another viewpoint. As the light of day begins to fade, the lanterns light the area as the darkness falls. And speaking of dining, it is another wonderful experience. Dining is an example of what you can expect. Oh, sorry about that. I wanted to show you this picture. This is what you could expect for your brunch after returning from your morning game drive. And the dishes are created from fresh produce, which is sourced locally. The interactions with the Davison's staff is stated as a highlight by most guest comment forms. Can you imagine having your brunch with the elephants watching you? Might be pretty interesting. And look at this. You could even have game viewing right from your deck. They're probably saying, God, I can't believe that animal is right there. Beautiful, inviting swimming pool at the main area. And again, look at the expanse of the land here. If you take that tree as your divider, the one right in the sort of the middle, everything to the left, you can see that far off tree-lined area. That is all open land where nothing else exists. That's why it is so pristine and special in these locations. Then we'll talk a little bit about their game drives. Here we see a young giraffe with an oxpecker in tow. That's a very common theme, as we talked about earlier with the Cape buffalo. And game drives take place in open Land Rovers, which are led by the highly experienced guides through our private wilderness safari concessions, which are situated in the most productive area of Hwange National Park. The varied habitats and vegetation types, as well as the countless waterholes, means that the drives are exciting with diverse species to be seen. Here we are at Davison's, and sometimes you don't have to go far for the game drive. They're right there. Hwange is amazing when it comes to the bird life. It is very prolific. There are over 400 plus documented and varied. Here you see a beautiful male red loeche. Wildlife such as hippo and baboon congregate around the watering hole, and you may even look out and see an ostrich and her chicks. I wasn't expecting ostrich when I went to South Africa. It was a really surprising experience. They're also in East Africa. So we'll also have the opportunity to get some incredible photos like this one, because the guides could spot them even if you couldn't see them to save your life. They're there and they can find them, and they'll take your camera even for you if you like, and get that perfect shot of the animal that they saw for you. Here's another wonderful look at the animals. Here we can see them, the zebra mixing together with the various antelopes. Night drives are incredible. So quiet again. Only the voice of your guide that's taking you out, and being able to spot these animals at the nighttime is really an incredible experience. And another thing that's incredible at night in all of the places we talked about is the beautiful night skies. It's an amazing time to be able to just stop and look up and notice how beautiful the stars are and how many you can see. We never see anything like that where we live at home, but you will experience it every night in all of these locations. Really is quite wonderful. And last but not least, we would have a village visit if possible. That's an authentic village experience which takes place in a manner that is respectful to all parties, usually around 2 hours, and guided by one of the local villagers or perhaps a wilderness guide. It often includes a guided tour of the school where we could meet the headman or the head woman and enjoying cultural exchanges with the villagers. And that is, a big part of the enjoyment is to connect with these wonderful people, both at your camp and in this kind of an experience. It really is very special, and they all make you feel like you're the only person that matters on earth. It really is a very cool experience. So that is ending my presentation, and we're going to turn it back over to Melinda. Oh,
Thank.
this
Oh,
one. Sorry about that.
okay,
Paying
go
full,
ahead.
paying full savings for all of Africa is $1,000 off per couple and $500 off for a solo traveler. And that's when you pay in full 7 days after you make your reservation. And then if you decide to add a pre or a post or both, Travel Central can offer exclusive savings, being a part of the Signature Travel Network of $100 off per person per stay. So if you did two arrangements, then it would be double. There we go.
Thank you, Marilyn. I appreciate it. As she said, this is just one of the many trips that Alexander Plus Roberts can offer in Africa. They obviously do South Africa. So if you wanted to go to the country of South Africa, they can do that. They do Kenya, Tanzania. They do the gorillas in Rwanda. So there's lots of options. And we just wanted to highlight one so you get the feel of what's in Africa, what to do there, and kind of see the resorts. Often when I'm talking to travelers about um, Africa, they hear camps because we use the term camps and lodges. But as you can see, these are not at all camping. It's just a term used. They're beautiful resorts with incredible service and wonderful accommodations. So, as we said, Travel Central is your ultimate resource. We're here to answer questions, customize your vacations. We monitor prices, schedule changes on airlines, and just really make sure that everything is seamless as possible for you. So when you go on vacation, you really are spending your travel dollars well, and that someone is taking care of you. And finally, we want to say thank you for joining us. I forgot to tell you this at the beginning. If you have any questions, if you could drop it in the chat box real quick. If not, we'll go to the last slide, Marilyn, and just tell you thank you. I'm just going to wait 1 second to make sure we get nothing in the chat box. And then we'll go ahead and end the presentation. I did record it. I will be sending it out to everyone who registered so they can, if they have other questions. Travel Central is here. We are the locally owned agency in Metairie, which is based out of New Orleans, Louisiana. We're happy to help you, and we have several people here who love Africa and will be happy to help you plan your African safari. Thank you for joining us today. Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye now.
Thank you.